Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Stephen Culp. Stephen is one of Chattanooga's most prodigious and low-key entrepreneurs, as well as a huge community supporter. Stephen, before we get into our conversation and I get to share why I think you're the most interesting man in the world, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. In my cup is a tea from a country called Mauritius, which is...
Where's Mauritius?
It's about 800 miles east of Madagascar. It's where my wife's family was originally from.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
You know, we've done 130 of these now, and I would bet you in the last 20 that half of the folks are tea drinkers now.
Wonder what that says.
I don't know. Is it a black tea, green tea?
It is a black tea. And my wife, her family is such an interesting story in themselves.
Oh, I bet.
That'll be for another podcast.
Yeah, Mauritius. And I'm showing my ignorance. I had never heard of Mauritius.
Yeah, it's a tiny little island. And I like to say that my wife is my favorite Mauritian. That's another old guy reference.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my favorite Martian. I like that. Well, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you here. We've known each other, I guess, probably about 20, 25 years now, and always had great respect for you. And I called you probably Chattanooga's low-key entrepreneurs because you just kind of keep your head down and do your thing. And you do not just that, but a lot of great things in the community. And I really just want to start from the beginning. You're born in Birmingham, huh?
Born in Birmingham, Alabama. My whole family's pretty much from Alabama, and I've got 4 brothers, 3 now. Unfortunately, one passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But growing up with 5 boys in Alabama was
I bet.
Was an experience.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the last.
Oh, okay.
And that was a great position to be in from a lot of perspectives. I avoided a lot of the collateral damage that was going on, and I was able to learn a lot about what to do and what not to do. And
well, you had all those brothers getting the lessons before you.
Absolutely.
You just observed and said, well, I'm going to make a note of that. Don't do that.
Taking notes nonstop.
What's the age spread?
18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So were you the youngest by a lot then?
Absolutely. My oldest brother, he tells me that I was the youngest accomplice to crime. He would take me to like the liquor stores and bring me in as his baby, and they would never ID him. So, yeah.
Did you grow up more as an only child since there was a big spread?
To some extent,
yeah.
Yes. I mean, it gave me the chance to observe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I wasn't always in the battles that were happening, so I got to
because brothers fight, and they're not fighting; they're just roughhousing.
Yeah, and something's wrong if they're not fighting.
Yeah,
and our way of showing affection for each other in our family was literally punch each other in the stomach. And you got to imagine, my dad was a tough and very smart guy.
Well, you said he governed with his eyebrows.
That's absolutely true. When you've got 5 boys running around breaking things, you've got to figure out a way to bring some order. And for me, literally, I mean, I would go do something that I probably shouldn't have done, and I'd come back home and he'd just raise one eyebrow and look at me, and that's all I needed.
Oh, that's great.
That's all I needed. And my mother, she was an artist, but she was tough as nails, and she could beat me in arm wrestling till I was 15 years old. Acquired skill, I think. But, necessary to govern that household.
Well, I understand the look that a dad can give. I'm one of 7, and I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and my dad mastered that. That just all he had to do was give you that look, and you go, "Oh crap,
yeah,
I won't do that again."
Absolutely right.
So you're born in Birmingham, but you moved to Chattanooga for your early school years. What brought you to Chattanooga?
My father was in insurance, and so had sold insurance door to door in Alabama, and then had kind of worked his way into his own like his family's business, and then came up here and worked for a company called Interstate. And that brought us to Chattanooga, thank goodness. If I look back, across my entire life, Chattanooga really is probably the only place that I deemed to have a soul.
Yeah.
In all the places that I ended up living. We lived kind of on the Georgia side of Lookout. I spent all my days in the woods every single day. You hear about how younger generations or older generations differ in how they were brought up. But in the woods, I remember one day coming home and I had 111 ticks on me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My friend and I both had to just basically splay out on the bed and get our mothers to pull all those ticks off. But that was just sort of normal. And, building tree houses and things like that.
Well, you make a good point, because our generation and older, you got up in the morning, you went out, you were back by dark, but getting a tick on you wasn't a big deal. 111, a big deal. But, you're out in the woods, you come home with a tick and okay. No one freaked out of, oh my God.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I guess you would say, problem solving that would go on during a day like that. You're out there, you really don't have a lot of support going on around you, or a lot of people micromanaging your life at that point. And so you get creative and maybe a little bit entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I would recommend treehouse building to anybody that can have that opportunity.
Well, I think back of the tree houses that I was associated with, and I think they would be condemned pretty quickly. They weren't even good looking.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I went up there a few years ago and tried to find some old ones, and there were some still pieces of wood nailed into some trees. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. And it was all just salvage stuff.
Yeah. Stuff you found, pulled out of a dumpster.
Yep.
Went to the storage room and got Dad's hammer and nails and a saw.
Absolutely. And then build something 30 feet up in the air.
Yeah. With a makeshift stairs that you pounded into the trunk of the tree.
Yeah. It sounds like you've done it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But you end up moving to Jacksonville during your high school years. What takes you to Jacksonville?
Pretty much the same thing.
Same thing?
My dad was moving around, and Jacksonville was a place where I went to high school and spent most of my free time when I had it surfing and doing other things. I was doing a lot of martial arts, and I would do fighting tournaments, sparring tournaments, and I played tennis for the high school team.
So you took your love of the woods and just translate that to the ocean.
That's actually a pretty good observation. I hadn't thought about that, but it's kind of just another area of complete open possibility. And the ocean is something that once you've been in it for a while, it never leaves you. And that's the only complaint I have about Chattanooga is it's a little bit landlocked, but I do look at the river and squint my eyes, and I do love the water. You
ever do paddle boarding on the river?
No, not as much as I should. I have done some, but and I look at all those fancy lift foils and things nowadays, and dream. Maybe one day.
So would you get up in the morning and just go to the beach and surf all day? Was that your routine?
If I had a free day, yeah. A lot of the time I was sort of the way I made extra bucks was salvaging and selling golf balls. There are a lot of golf courses in Florida, right? And there are a lot of bad golfers, and they
present company.
I don't even play, to be honest, but I realized they were hitting them in the lakes all the time, and they were just sitting there, and they were perfectly good. And so, how
old were you when you did this?
I probably started when I was like 11 or something like that,
wow.
and I did it for years. And I would just get in a canoe, and I'm not even sure if it was my canoe or one I found in the woods or something like that, and paddle into different lakes and jump out of the canoe and with a net and a mask, gather up as many golf balls as I could.
Did you have anyone with you, like a buddy or
occasionally?
Yeah.
It was not the ideal work environment from a lot of perspectives. There were alligators in those lakes, for one thing. They were pretty mucky, but I will say that experience taught me so much about business.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was learning those lessons at the time, but everything from, keeping inventory to having a supply chain to some extent to dealing with competition. Like you have to imagine my friends and not friends who started noticing you could make real money doing that. I would just, clean them up and put them all out in the laundry room. And then I'd put them in boxes. And I used to have a stand. I'd sit out there at the stand and, the guys would come up and buy the balls. And then I realized I can just leave these at a tee with dollars and just with price tags on them and rely on the honor system. And mostly that worked. And so that allowed me to scale because I could put it on every third tee or something like that because these guys were chucking balls in the lakes like you wouldn't believe. And I was just raking it in to some extent. And then competition came along and I had to police it. And so I learned about security. And all that.
Would the golf course be object to you being out there selling?
Back then, no.
No, yeah.
Nowadays, I'm sure I'd be in jail or something. But, I'm sure they weren't completely thrilled. I imagine they probably noticed a depression in their sales of golf balls during that time. But it was good for the environment too. Well,
as a golfer, after you lose 3 or 4 balls in a round and you get to those last couple of holes, you're just looking for anything to hit. Go, oh man, there's a whole thing of balls right there.
Yeah, it was a great gig.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was one of the things you talked about that you also created a tasteless video game.
Oh, well.
I got to hear more about that.
Yeah. So this was the era of the earliest, like TRS-80 computers, Commodore 64s, the earliest days of programming for the masses, I would say. So I kind of got into that. And I wrote a game called Mad Reactor, which was a pretty cool game, in my opinion. And
so you knew you were doing coding at that point.
I was doing code. I didn't know it was called coding.
What language was it? Basic?
So a lot of the marketing part of it was done in Basic, and then the actual game itself I did in this weird machine language format. And I sent it off to a few game makers at the time, one of them being Microsoft, which I don't know, probably had 100 employees at the time or something like that.
And again, how old are you at this point?
I might have been 14 or 15, something like that. And I got a letter back, which, oh my gosh, I wish I had kept that letter.
Oh yeah.
Because they wrote me a letter back, first of all, which I thought, it was just normal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't normal. And it basically said, great game, interesting, graphics, cool dynamics, but unfortunately its premise is tasteless. And the tasteless element, and you got to keep this in context of today's video games, was I basically said, if you don't get these reactor core elements in place at the right time, in time, too bad for the city of Metropolis. That
was tasteless.
Triggered them. Yeah, that was tasteless. And now you go sit down and look at what's being done, what's being played. I mean, it's just mayhem, gore, and everything else. So
that's what I've never understood about video games is who wants to sit around and watch all that?
Yeah.
But that was tasteless.
That was tasteless. And because of the standards of the time, I guess
No chance Bill Gates signed that letter, huh?
I really wish I had that letter. It's funny, you don't think of the time like I should keep this. This might be historical.
Were you, and the only word I can think, were you more of a loner doing these things yourself, or did you have a group of friends? Because you came up with the golf balls and the video game. Introverted's probably a better word.
I think I'm probably naturally an introvert.
Yeah.
And I probably recognize that and probably do things to force myself from being limited by that. So a lot of these insane projects, I would, have somebody alongside me just for the ride,
right.
Just for the enjoyment of it. But a lot of the ones we're talking about, it was kind of just me.
Did you feel like you were challenging yourself to get out of your comfort zone?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like we talked about earlier, I was very curious, and I just wanted to see what would work and what would not work. And doing it on your own, and this is sort of the trap of the introvert, you can make mistakes and only harm yourself. And so I kind of liked that because I could freely experiment with things and learn the lessons all by myself.
Well, you should know that your tasteless video game wouldn't sell today. It's not graphic enough.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So growing up in high school in Jacksonville, surfing, karate, tennis, you go to UNC. What gets you to UNC?
Well, again, back then, I think choosing colleges was a lot more a random process than it is nowadays. I probably visited, I think I applied to 4 kind of dart throw colleges, Vandy, Davidson, Duke, and Carolina. And I probably visited 2 of those, and the weather was probably good on one of those, and it might have been spring in Chapel Hill. And that can have an effect on a young man. So I probably chose it for.
Well, and you know what's interesting about how colleges were chosen then, because I was very much the same way. The only thing I needed to get into University of Tennessee was a completed application, a signed check, and a stamp. and I was, but we didn't take college visits.
Yeah.
You know, you may have taken 1 or 2 at the most today. And I remember my daughters, you know, it was a road trip.
Yeah.
You know, you'd go for 3 days and go see 5 schools.
It's an entire industry.
Yeah. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I think the only sort of conscious aspect of that choice to go to North Carolina, especially versus Duke, and I'm just going to, jab at the Dukies, is it felt to me like a microcosm of the real world more than some of the other places. That you had all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and that was fascinating to me. Again, I was just a curious kid. I just wanted to learn everything I possibly could.
Well, and that kind of laid the groundwork for your future, because you ended up going to a lot of different places and different cultures and meeting a lot of different people and doing a lot of different things. But while you were at UNC, you studied geography and international studies. That's an interesting combination.
Well, I actually showed up there as an art major, and then I was a math major, and then I was an English major, and wound up with geography and international studies, because those really are 2 majors you can kind of lump anything into.
Yeah.
So there's economic geography, there's political, there's social, there's physical, there's, the math part of cartography and all of that. So yeah, those are a bit of a just way for me to kind of get away with studying everything I possibly could. International studies to some extent as well, just bringing in the rest of the world into the equation. So
seems like your curiosity really drove a lot of what you did.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, and I think it's what keeps life interesting.
Yeah.
I hate it when you lose it. And we may talk about this later, but there are times later in my life when that was an absolute critical element to choosing certain courses of action that we took. So
yeah, I want to get into that, and before we do, I just wanted to hit on so you're at UNC, you're an RA making money, you're doing varsity fencing.
Yeah,
but I got to hear about your paper writing business and the worst review ever.
Mm-hmm. So this was the era when typewriters and electronic typewriters and things like that were still unusual, and so you could build a business out of just having a typewriter. And I had some kind of Smith Corona, something like that, and some liquid paper. And just set up this informal business to begin with, to help people type their papers. They'd give me a rough draft and I'd type. I wouldn't.
So you weren't writing them. You were just typing the paper.
No, I mean, as adventurous as I may seem, I've always been kind of a Boy Scout in my head. So I was never going to violate the honor code or anything like that. But I was helping people get their papers polished at the end. I might correct some typos and things like that, but it was going okay. And then I had this girl from Turkey come to me and give me a paper at like 10 p.m. that I had to have to her by her 8 o'clock class. And I spent all night typing it.
Do you remember how many pages it was?
It's probably 30 pages, something like that.
So that's a lot of work.
And I think I had one typo in it. And I think that's the only thing she saw in that paper. And she wrote me, handwrote, not typed, the most vitriolic, like full of just awful insults kind of letter you can possibly imagine. And I didn't know what to do with that for about 5 seconds. And then I was like, I'm going to post this on my dorm door and say, look how satisfied my customers are, just to see what the heck happens. And I swear that was like the turning point for the business. This is like when everybody started coming to me. I don't know why it is. Maybe there was some element of just, shock, attention getting, but I think there was also an element of leveling with people.
Yeah.
And it was putting it all out there, literally.
Well, and one typo in 30 pages, everyone else is going, man, that's pretty good. I got to sign up with this guy.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Your year abroad, so you have a year abroad studying, you go to Paris?
That was not just any year abroad for me. And Paris ended up being a small part of it, to be honest, even though I love that place and it is magical. And
well, you didn't spend a lot of time in Paris for your year abroad, did you?
Right. I was there to ostensibly be studying European politics, but this was 1989, 1990. A lot of things happened in European politics at that time, and a lot of things were happening when I was there. So I would go into class, and then the next day I'd go into class and they'd say, scratch what we told you last week. I mean, everything is different now. And this was because there were revolutions going on in Eastern Europe. And I couldn't take it sitting there in class. I just couldn't take it. So I had this old tape recorder. I had this Olympus Weathermatic 2 camera, I think. And I just took off east. And
now, did your parents know this?
No. No, I don't think so. That's another funny thing. Yeah, I was far, far away checking in.
Not that they could do anything about it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I could call them.
We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah, yeah. Funny time. But I headed east and was in places like Romania, like a month after Ceausescu had basically been pitchforked, and Hungary and Czechoslovakia during the elections with Václav Havel running. I remember that. I mean, the poet president. And
so you go to these countries as a college student, and you're just there to be part of it, to see it.
Absolutely.
Be part of history.
I had that tape recorder. I'd just walk up to people and just be like, tell me something. Tell me what's going on.
Do you still have those tapes?
I do.
Have you done anything with them in terms of
Not really. When I came back to Carolina, I did have like a photo and audio exhibition they put on because it was some interesting stuff. I had some interesting photos. But, I mean, it wasn't like nowadays where you have an iPhone at your disposal at all times. So there were a ton of missed historical moments that I just got to I got to enjoy them. I got to, experience them. And so there is a trade-off always in my head of, had I had my devices back then, would I have been able to experience the Brandenburg Gate opening in Berlin and a German, East German, and pardon my French, handing me a hammer and saying, knock the shit out of it. And
what a cool thing.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And I guess at that point I was thinking, this is just the way life is. It's awesome, but it's always going to be like this.
Well, you and I were born at a time, and all we knew was the Berlin Wall. All we knew was the Soviet Union. And I remember when it fell, and just the world was changing.
It was changing. It was hopeful.
Yeah.
I still got chunks of that Berlin Wall in a jar.
You got to knock
in my
part
office.
of it out.
Absolutely. It's probably asbestos-ridden thing, but I mean, that night is probably one of the top 10 nights of my entire life. Just being.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, and what a hopeful time.
Yeah.
For people. It pains me a little bit to see where we are now.
Yeah.
And how quickly we've forgotten so many things that we should remember.
It's to a great degree we taken for granted the way it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And as history, or as fate would have it, I wound up in Eastern Europe again in the Peace Corps in a couple of years after that. And it was a time when, the wall had come down, the Soviet Union had collapsed. Places like Hungary, which is where I was, were sort of exorcising Russian anything from their schools, their culture. And so they were bringing in a lot of people, including me, to teach English, to teach about Western culture, that kind of thing.
So you were teaching in the Peace Corps? I
was, but doing a lot of other things. As any Peace Corps volunteer can tell you, it's not a job that you have total control over. And when you show up, people have expectations, and you got to gear up pretty quickly. But it was a time when, Eastern Europe absolutely had in their mind, we're not going to get involved with the Russians again unless they change. And I see where Hungary has come now, and it is the ultimate irony, because that party that's in charge now was the party that was coming in when I was there. And they were a party of hope and youth and democracy. And now
it's completely different.
It's the same guy.
Really?
Viktor Orban.
And you know what I find interesting? We went to Budapest, gosh, probably 10 years ago now on a company trip, actually. But in the center of Budapest is a statue of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And you look at Hungary today.
Tear down that wall, Mr. Culp.
Yeah.
Yep. That's that reminds me of another part of that. And you tell me if I'm skipping around too much.
No, that's okay.
When I was over there, I wanted my students to see the West to some extent. I wanted them to come back to the U.S. if I could possibly get them there for a couple of weeks, and along with a couple of other volunteers who were over there, we were able to organize a trip. And to your point about the statue of Ronald Reagan, I remember we landed in Washington, D.C. with about 30 Hungarian students and about 5 teachers. And we were driving to where we were headed, and they were all going to stay with different families. And I went to the bus driver. I was like, take a different route. Let's go this way and this way and this way. And what I was doing, well, we went around a corner, and the kids had just been, and suddenly they just got silent. And I turned around and looked, and about half of them were crying. And I looked over, and we were in front of the White House. And that moment, I will never forget it, because it taught me how significant that symbol was for them and their families and their countries for the last 50 plus years of struggling. And it just absolutely, bowled them over in the moment. And it's never left me. The example that we as a country set, by choice or not, and the expectations that are on us, and the expectations that, in my view, we need to live up to. Mm-hmm. I'll leave it at that.
And I'd agree with you 100%. It's that perspective that really puts into focus where we are today. And I'm not going to say shirking our responsibility, but not stepping up to our responsibility the way we should.
We need to remember a lot of people still see us as that shining city on a hill, and we need to shine.
Yes, I'm going to leave it at that. So you're in Europe for that year away. You've experienced all this, and you got to go back to North Carolina after that. Mm-hmm. What's that like to go back to Chapel Hill and say, well, guess what I've been doing? What'd you do on your study abroad? Well, I knocked out a piece of the Berlin Wall.
It's so funny, Mike, because, you get a lot of questions when you come back from an experience like that, similar with Peace Corps. And even back then, people's attention spans, you realize, are not that great. So I would start in on a, 30-minute, oh my gosh, let me tell you about this, and realize, okay, maybe they're only ready for a paragraph, and then maybe they're only ready for a sentence. And then in the end, both for that year in Eastern Europe and my 2.5 years in Peace Corps, I had to reduce it to one word, and the word was intense. And if people would take that bait, then I could tell them a little bit more about the experience. But yeah, it taught me a good bit about communicating.
And you did this on your own. You were traveling by yourself, or did you go with anyone?
I went some by myself, and then some with my roommate who was kind of midway through being recruited into the Marines, and we had these kind of military cuts. And so when we would show up in places like Romania a month after Ceausescu was killed, we were absolutely labeled as trouble, spies or whatever, and we weren't. We were just
skeletons.
Yeah, but he was my friend David. Friends with him to this day. I met one of my other best friends through him, but he and I think to some extent we supported each other in positive ways, and to other extents we probably pushed each other too much. Because we were in some situations that we probably should not have been, probably a dozen of them.
How about did you make any friends with anyone in the countries that you're still friends with today? Like the guy who hands you the hammer and says, "Knock the shit out of this."
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I actually have a godson in Hungary. There was a family there whom I grew really close with, and have stayed in touch with. But honestly, it's kind of hard to go back there, and it was particularly when it was kind of fresh. I did go back and see some of my younger students graduate, and it was just personally hugely emotional. But at least back then, the burden, they would roll out the red carpet whenever I would come, and that was awkward to me. I didn't want to impose that kind of burden on them, and so I didn't go back much. And that's something I regret probably a bit. And I'd like to take my kids over there and show them around.
What a great educational experience for them.
Yeah.
You get back to North Carolina, you graduate, and there's a period between heading out to Stanford. So I think you mentioned the United Nations and
so United Nations was a short job I had in New York City. I had to basically research and present a paper on reform in the United Nations, and man, it needed it, and it does need it. I'd say my positive takeaway from that experience, besides just living in New York City for a while, which was just wild, was, just the daily, like going to the cafeteria and sitting down with people from 150 different countries. On the more, I guess, critical side, United Nations, it's like a lot of human creations where the idea is fantastic, but the execution is flawed. And I think a lot of people were there, and this, maybe they'll come back and get me for saying this, were there because their countries didn't want them in their own countries. And so it wasn't always the best and the brightest, and the motives weren't always the greatest.
So like the ambassador to whichever country was, we got to get Stephen out of here.
To some extent, either a rival to the political elite in that country or a troublemaker. And that sort of helped me mature to some extent, because I had been completely idealistic up to that point. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing, this person isn't telling me the truth right now. And it just kind of brought out some good lessons. And from there, this was in between college and Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Then I went out to Boulder, Colorado, because I thought, that'd be a great place to just spend 6 months before I had to head off to Hungary. And it was a great place to spend 6 months. I worked for the Nature Conservancy for a little while. I worked for the Boulder County Juvenile Justice Center on their sort of alcohol, drug rehab stuff. And man, that's an amazing place too. The weather is perfect. So if you ask me, where's weather perfect in the world? I'd say Boulder, Colorado, because the summers are summer, the falls are falls, the winters are winter. And I mean, really.
Well, and it's an interesting tie indirectly back to Chattanooga, because Bob Corker was saying, we're going to aspire to be the Boulder of the East.
Yep. And now Boulder probably aspires to be the Chattanooga in the West, or at least they should at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what gets you to Stanford? Were you wanting to be a lawyer, or was a law degree the path you thought you wanted for based on your travels?
I thought it would be a versatile degree. Uh-huh. And I applied before I went off to Peace Corps. And that was a little bit unorthodox, because they didn't really allow you to take deferments. But I applied, and then I said, hey, I'm going to Peace Corps for 2 years. You can accept me or not accept me. And thankfully, they accepted me. Can I go back to Peace Corps for
please,
just a second?
Because I was actually wanting to get back to Peace Corps.
Yeah. Just a couple of things about that. First of all, everybody should consider doing it at any point in their lives. We had people who were 20 and people who were 80.
Well, and clarify that a bit, because in my mind, the Peace Corps is young people going to countries help. It's open to anyone that wants to go.
Absolutely. And it values people with more experience to some extent. It truly, I'm not just being a promotional agent here. The older people in our group absolutely were among the most valuable people, both for us in a cohort who needed, support and wisdom at times, and for their assignments. They brought so much, experience, life experience, to what they were doing. I was winging it. I was absolutely the least qualified teacher, among other things, in my group. I had no training, and you do go through a certain amount of training, but I was winging it, and that probably was among the most entrepreneurial things that I've ever had to do, because you literally land in a place, you don't even speak the language, you don't know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, you don't know anybody there, and yet you've got to make it happen. And so you just got to get yourself together.
Figure it out.
Yes. And not everybody did. And there were times when I was like depressed out of my mind and things like that. To this day, if I hear the song Graceland by Paul Simon, that was the one like cassette I had in this little cassette player. And I'd play that every night before doing my lesson planning. And the lesson planning was terrifying for me because, again, I was not particularly qualified, or at least in my mind.
And you're teaching English?
I'm teaching English, but you end up teaching everything else too. And you end up doing everything else. But I'd be terrified all night. But that was the only song that was playing in the back. So if you play that now,
it brings all those memories back
on my face. Yeah.
And am I wrong in thinking you don't hear the Peace Corps promoted as much today? I mean, I think there's some people that don't know it still exists.
Yeah, and things are moving fast.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it may not exist.
Well, exactly.
It was, I think it was one of the last places that Doge entered the building for. And I think that there are enough supporters of Peace Corps, even in Congress right now, to where it's a little bit of a hands-off thing. I'm sure their budget's going to be affected and all of that. But is it dollars well spent? I'll argue with anyone that yes, it is. I wish everybody could do it. But the soft and the hard relationships, connections that come out of that are priceless. And
and what it does for the country too, our country.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, you can't buy that image.
No. Unbelievable. So, I mean, on a personal level, it was a fantastic experience. I learned the language. I also learned body language because I found a girl over there who ended up being my girlfriend. She didn't speak English and I didn't speak Hungarian at the time. So I had to learn we had to learn how to understand each other just through, again, the eyebrow, whatever. And that was fascinating in itself. And it also taught me how to deal with a government agency sort of looming over your every move. To some extent, we get these reports, or we'd have to put together these reports at the end of the quarter or semester, or halfway through the year, and they always ended with, "And what's your biggest obstacle to?" And I'd always say, "You." You're driving me crazy. You're trying to quantify everything I'm doing here that is unquantified. Like, how many people have you enlightened? Ridiculous questions, right?
Yeah.
Like that. I can't fault them. You've got to be accountable to some extent. But on a bigger level, Hungary at the time was a pretty insular place and representative of a lot of places in Eastern Europe. Not a lot of exposure to people outside of their normal sphere of influence. And so I was to some extent an ambassador, as was every Peace Corps volunteer there. And we had, 50 of us out there learning and sharing and to some extent bringing people back to the U.S.
One of the things you said earlier about the Peace Corps is, you're sent and you're not given a lot of instruction. You got to figure it out. In my mind, the Peace Corps goes out as a cohort and everyone's living together in a compound and that kind of thing? Or is it more individualistic of, okay, you're going to be going to Budapest and you're going to be teaching, you got to find an apartment, you got to do this. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, you'll hook up with your cohort here.
Yeah. We were in a place that was unique in a lot of ways because Eastern Europe only had about 6 plus your window where Peace Corps actually was invited in. Second, it was a place that didn't look all that unfamiliar to a young person coming from the U.S. Like when we landed, you look around and you go, this doesn't really look like, the trenches I was expecting to be working in.
But what you used to see on the old Peace Corps PSAs of third world countries and abject poverty, you're flying into a really cool city. Budapest is a cool city.
Yes, and so to some extent, you lower your guard, which a lot of our folks did in our group, where you think, oh, this is kind of just like home. I'm just going to act like it's home, and it isn't home. It's different in unseen ways, in profound ways. And to answer your question, there were about 50 of us in our group. For the first 3 months, we went to a smaller town in southern Hungary. We were all put into different families, but we would meet during the days and get trained on teaching and language and other things like that. So we were together to some extent in that way. Living with a family, a Hungarian family, who didn't speak in English. And at the end of that 3+ months, I've got some stories from that, but you find out where you're going to go. And I imagine that's like a doctor finding out where they're going to get their residency or whatever. It was a pretty dramatic day, and they had a huge map out on the floor in this building, and we were looking down on this map, and it was revealed.
And you don't get a say in this.
I had some preferences, and I worked my tail off. So I think my preferences probably got some weight. And I wound up in a place called Eger, which if you drink wine, and I don't, there's something called Egri Bikaver, which is Eger bull's blood wine. And it's...
Sounds inviting.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, a reasonably well-known wine. And it was a wine town to some extent, and people would invite me over, and if you didn't drink a little bit, you would be considered rude. And I don't drink, but I would drink then just to, and so I ended up being like the best time in town. So, anyway, there, like I mentioned before, there were 20-year-olds and there were 80-year-old couples and couples, like people who traveled together, married and everything in between. And that was fascinating, but some of them didn't make it all the way through. There was a guy who literally crawled out of his classroom window and just left the country.
Wow. It's got to be hard. I mean, there's some romance in it. Yeah, you're traveling internationally, you're helping people, but you're also very isolated. You're not necessarily alone in a country, but you're alone. And
the winters, like Christmas time.
Oh,
that was hard.
Well, and that's what I don't think someone thinks about is, at Christmas, you're still in Hungary.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, I'm going to go home and spend Christmas with my family.
Right. And there was, at that time, they heated their homes with coal. And so the air was just thick. If you dried your clothes out on your balcony, which I would have to do, they'd get nasty. It's probably like Chattanooga in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
But it was just dark.
Yeah.
And those were some tough times mentally, but again, like running around in the woods all day in Chattanooga, you problem solve.
Yeah.
You kind of got to figure out a way to get through it. And most of us did.
And I want to talk more about the Peace Corps, but I before we run out of time, I got to get you back to Chattanooga. And I think that segue of heating your home with coal and soot is a good portion of it. You go to Stanford law degree, and you moved. I know you moved to Chattanooga in 2001, but before that, you had started Smart Furniture prior to that.
Yeah.
Because my assumption was you started it here because that's when I first got to know you.
So I was out at Stanford during a really interesting time to be in Silicon Valley. It was, when Netscape was born and Google and PayPal and Musk and Sergey Brin and all these guys were within a mile doing their thing. And most of my class at law school didn't end up, a large proportion of them didn't end up practicing law because it was such an entrepreneurial environment to be in, just incredible environment. And strangely, I spent my work time out there with the FBI. And so I ended up going to different places, Washington, D.C. and Atlanta during the Olympics. And that was all fascinating. But somehow I woke up kind of in the middle of the night, one night with this idea for a kind of like basically a business model that involved furniture that was like Legos for adults. I had been a Lego kid, and my kids are Lego kids. And I woke up and I was like possessed, and I found a professor whose garage I could take over, and took it over. I probably ruined the place, and I need to go back to him and like pay him something. I had a router that I had built in there, and a whole kind of workshop setup, and was drilling prototypes and doing all kind of stuff like that, trying to make the original Smart Furniture, which finally happened and ended up with 4 patents on that design. And
so was it easy to assemble furniture when
it was
you said
tool
Lego?
free? Yeah, absolutely. It came from sort of my.
So the anti-IKEA.
That was absolutely the anti-IKEA. In so many ways, you could get a completely customized, whatever, sent to your door in a week or less. And at that time, that was completely revolutionary. Yeah. You could also design it online and buy it online. And I think we had the first e-commerce enabled design tool ever. And it started scaling. I realized, I wanted to find a place where I could have a real life, but that also had an entrepreneurial side to it. Well, guess where I wound up.
Well, and you really rolled the dice in Chattanooga then, because in 2001, we really didn't have an entrepreneurial reputation. We're trying to build one.
Well, let me tell you what you did have. You had Bob Corker as mayor.
Ding, ding.
I came to town, and I don't know how it happened, but I met with him, and I didn't seek that out. I think he probably found out there's some entrepreneur from, Silicon Valley or something in town, and he's a convincing guy, and he played a large part in my decision to come here. And the reason it made sense is because this place has a soul, and it also is entrepreneurial as hell. And so I moved downtown right in the middle of it all. There was one aquarium at the time,
yeah,
and
we
a
just
big
had the one
smokestack in the parking lot.
I forgot about the smokestack.
Oh yeah, that's what my view was. I looked out my window and I watched Chattanooga transform.
Those were really neat times too.
Oh my gosh! Sky's the limit. It still is.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest just drunk on the Kool-Aid of Chattanooga kid you'll ever meet.
When you identified Chattanooga, that had a lot to do with your childhood and growing up. And in those experiences, but coming and connecting with Mayor Corker at the time, what was it that he said to you, if you can remember, or was there anything he said to you that convinced you that, you know what, this is where I want to be?
I can't remember his exact words, but I think the essence of what I got from that was, this is the kind of place where you can come and make a difference. And he believed that because he was doing it.
Yeah.
He was doing it. He was living it. And I think I got to look at his example and say, man, this is cool. What this guy's doing is cool. And I just want to, come and help if I can, come be a part of it. And that was 24 years ago.
Did you know anyone when you moved here?
I have a brother who lives on Signal. But outside of that, not really, no. And there were advantages and disadvantages of that. I think, it's a little more cliquey at the time. And there were some families that I was apparently supposed to know, and I didn't know them. And but the advantage to that was you're kind of unfettered. You don't have the pecking order in your head. And so, Chattanooga was just an open door. And so I just met everybody I could, and everybody was so helpful. All the assumptions I had about the place were right. And I still think that there's a Chattanooga way, and we could lose our way. Absolutely. But
And we've taken a break from it at times.
We have, but we have thankfully enough history and to some extent documented history that I think we can refer to it when we need to. And this may be one of those times, but
yeah.
I view it right now as a bit of an island to some extent. When you're looking at the sort of the national landscape and the sort of chaos one way or the other, whatever party you're in, it's a little bit chaotic and it's a little bit exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Chattanooga is a great place to turn your focus. Yeah. You can make a difference. You can help people. It's doable.
It's interesting you say that because I moved here end of 99, 2000, mm-hmm. and I thought I'd be here 2 years. Because to a great degree, that's the broadcast industry. It's almost like the Army. If you want to move up, you move out.
Yeah.
But when I got here, besides my kids falling in love with the place, I realized exactly what you said. You can make a difference. I was able to do things here that I would not have been able to do in a Memphis or in Atlanta or in Nashville. And I found the people welcoming from the standpoint of, well, in every standpoint, but really from the standpoint of, do you know what, if you're willing to roll your sleeves up and work with us, we're more than happy to help you. And I found myself around the table in meetings were places I didn't think I was supposed to be. And I'm looking, I'm going, you sure you wanted me in this meeting?
And yet you were welcome, right?
Yeah.
You know what it feels like to me, Mike?
Yeah.
It feels like a team.
Yeah. Good point.
Chattanooga feels like a team to me. And I will go to my grave rooting for this team. When we don't act like that, we're at our worst. When we're fighting together, we can be at our best.
And I get your island analogy too, because all around us there's chaos. I mean, what's going on in the country is chaos. Everything just seems to be chaos. But here, I think people drop that regardless of what the party's telling them to do. They will realize that Chattanooga is more important than Chattanooga Way, and the way we do things and work together is a benefit to us all.
I believe and hope you're right. Like it's a delicate balance, right? But it's so valuable.
Yeah,
it's so valuable. So we got to preserve it.
Yeah. So you're building Smart Furniture at this time, but you've got other interests. And I believe you took Smart Furniture to a point. You brought TJ Gentle in and kind of handed off's not the right word, but transitioned there. Mm-hmm. Talk about Delegator. I'm curious about Delegator.
Yeah. So Delegator's a digital agency. To some extent, the ulterior motive of it was to build a company where I and our team, Andrew Scarborough was my co-founder there, would have to stay current forever. So you and I were talking about you coming to the Business Development Center and being able to stay plugged into everybody. To some extent, having kids, you stay plugged into what's current in life, even if it exhausts the hell out of you. Doing Delegator, it was highly technical, right? But our sort of business model is the merger of human insights with technical abilities to basically bring results for companies who want to grow their revenue. It mandates that we pay attention to what is going on in technology and that we are on top of it and in front of it. And obviously, there's lots of things going on in technology, and that was sort of the ulterior motive behind it. The thing that it was also born from necessity. I mean, at Smart Furniture, we needed expertise in digital media. We grew it in-house for a while, but the industry changes so fast, and we basically couldn't scale that part of the business so fast enough. So, I went out there looking for what agency we could use and really didn't find it. So
was it mainly SEO you were building?
I mean, there's SEO, PPC, anything digital that was advertising oriented, even, websites. And now we're into creative and all of that. And
which, when you started, was really a foreign language to most people.
Yeah. And yet most people knew they needed it to some extent. Like, well, we need a website. I don't know what that is, but we need one. And that was sort of what was happening 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now it's, well, I heard of this AI thing. I think we need to do it, but I don't know what it is. So we're trying to stay on top of that as well. It's interesting because AI has been extremely valuable to us internally as a company. I wouldn't say extremely valuable yet, but valuable. But it's also the kind of thing that could disrupt our business at the moment too, as it could disrupt so many others. In some ways that's frightening, but in some ways it's invigorating because you just got to stay on your game. And so it's a requirement of ours to stay on our games.
I got to tell you a quick AI story. I've been using AI, and my wife kind of poo-poos it. She's a little bit. So our garbage disposal seized up, and I can't figure it out. And the label is turned to the back, so I don't even know what brand it is. I took a picture of the garbage disposal. I fed it into AI. I said, "Tell me what brand and model this is, and what it won't turn in is making a humming noise. How can I fix it?" And it comes back, "Well, that looks like an Incinerator 547, and you need to get a 1/4-inch Allen wrench and turn the flywheel motor, and boom, you'll be okay." Son of a gun.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just a picture and a prompt into AI.
Imagine if we'd had it 50 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But imagine how good or bad you would be as a problem solver now if you had that 50 years ago. That's the question that's in my mind right now, is our kids can do exactly what you just did for every single question. And on the one hand, for somebody who's insatiably curious as I am, it's a blessing. I could talk to AI and ask it questions all day. And on the other hand, it could turn me into this lazy slob who can't solve problems without that crutch. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Yeah.
And for me, it made me a hero because I can't fix anything.
Yeah.
Then I'll take that. I'll take that for now. We're going to have to do this again, Stephen, because I mean, I'm looking at my list here of things I wanted to ask you about, and I haven't gotten to them all, but I do want to ask you about Causeway and how that came about.
Yeah. Causeway comes from a love of community and a love of entrepreneurism and entrepreneurs in Chattanooga. So the essential idea there was, let's take the proverbial entrepreneur in a garage, in this case, somebody who's got an idea for their community, and connect them with resources that they might not have been able to connect to themselves, like money, volunteers, time, expertise.
So if I'm an entrepreneur, I can get in touch with Causeway and they meet with me and decide.
So we're a little bit in hibernation now. Hopefully there'll be a kind of a part deux coming up. But back in our sort of peak time, yes. The idea was there's so much untapped potential out there in the community. I mean, I remember knocking on doors for something called Stand a long time ago, where
I remember
we'd say, what do you dream about this community, and what do you want to do? And they'd say, I want to help, but I don't know how, or I don't know where to start. And to me, that was just like an invitation. Like, let's set up something where all of those people can plug in and help. And honestly, if there's a theme to anything I've ever done, and we were talking earlier that my life is pretty random, and if there's a theme to it, though, it's trying to figure out ways to help people to help themselves. So Peace Corps, obvious.
Yeah.
Smart Furniture, the whole design on demand model, absolutely along those lines. Causeway, absolutely up that alley. And it's just a joy to me to be able to watch people take their ideas from, scratch to implementation, and especially in that context. If I could go back in time and win the lottery, I'd probably spend it all on something like Causeway. Because boy, does this world need some help, and boy, do we have a lot of people willing to do that. It's just they're not enabled yet with the resources in every case to carry those things out. So that would be a dream of mine if I get to go back to that.
Well, if there is a way to go back, I'm sure you'll be the guy to figure it out.
Right.
Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all of this possible. And it's thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do-good-here to explore exciting career opportunities at TVA. All right, last question, Stephen. You've heard it before, but I'm very interested in your answer because I'm sure there's just so many lessons along the way that you've learned. But what would you tell that 25-year-old self is important for a happy life?
You're right. There are so many lessons, Mike. I think the first would be try to get the big decisions right. And the sort of subtext to that is, what are the big decisions? Yeah. And, you and I were talking earlier, we're in our 50s and 60s. And when you look back, there were so many times when you thought, no, this is big, right? Or, oh, I just made a big mistake. And so many of those things were little. The big decisions in my book involve things like, who's your life partner? Who are you gonna marry?
Marry the right person.
Yes. Where are you gonna live? Are you gonna have children? Are you not? And kind of how are you gonna govern yourself, your life? And my father was a good guide for that last part of that question. So that's a big one. Don't worry about all the other things you're gonna screw up, because you're gonna screw up a ton of them. And that's the second lesson for me is own your mistakes. I used to tell entrepreneurs a lot, my best presentation slide was the one that said, here's all the things I've screwed up at the top of it. When I started with that slide, instantly all these cynical venture capitalists and whatever in the audience looked up and would say, wow, all right, this is somebody who's leveling with me, somebody who's owning their mistakes. And then obviously I need to follow with the slide and say, here's all the things I did to try to fix those mistakes. But that to me is a really good way to approach stuff, like own your mistakes, know that you're going to make them. Don't let it destroy you. Trust me, this is coming from somebody who can making mistakes hard, but own them and then just try to reprocess them into something productive. And that slide is a good example of that.
That's very disarming.
It's absolutely disarming, and not in a mischievous way.
No, just here.
That's the way Congress should work.
Yeah.
People should just level with people, get past all the
party bullshit.
Yes, golly, and just the performative stuff. I don't care where you're coming from. Another lesson, if you're okay with me giving a few lessons.
Please do. I'm enjoying this.
I don't know if you read Catch-22, but
yes.
Joseph Heller, who wrote that, the story goes he was at a party at this mansion, some hedge fund guy who was just richer than all get out. And Heller apparently didn't make much money off of Catch-22. And he was with a friend, and they got into this discussion with the hedge fund guy, and he was like, "Don't you wish you could be like this guy? Like have everything at your disposal?" And he said, "You know what? I've got one thing that guy will never have: enough." And when I heard that, I was like, "Damn, that's a great thing to fall back on when you get stuck in this, comparative competition." We were talking about social media earlier. Yep. I mean, where everybody's trying to outshine everybody else, even if it's fake.
Yep.
And it goes back to getting the big decisions right too.
I heard a quote, and I've used this a couple of times now, but it's a great quote for happiness, and it goes back to your Catch-22 story. Happiness is quality of life minus envy.
Yeah.
If you get past that envy part, you're going to be a heck of a lot happier, because when you start comparing.
Yeah. We've got to tune the algorithms a little bit out there, because our younger folks are having to work through that comparison stuff
it's hard.
Yeah. And it's so hard.
And particularly when you're growing your career, it's difficult not to compare because you know what? You feel like you're in a race. You feel like you're in a competition and I've got milestones I've got to hit.
And in that way, like admitting your mistakes is kind of disarming. It kind of takes you out of that track too, of where you just like, to where somebody's like, you're real. Cause you know what? I realize I've made mistakes too. I just haven't told anybody about them. And life is ironic. Another thing that has stuck with me is a fairly recently revived notion, and I thank Phil Bredesen and and our former governor
Bill Haslam.
Yes, they've started this podcast called "You Might Be Right." And
great podcast.
Howard Baker quote that's based on, and that's another thing I have realized is helpful to go through life with the sense that, okay, you may think you know everything, but you don't. And the person you're talking to may just, in fact, know the answer to the question you're talking to, or have some wisdom that you don't have already. And open yourself up and humble yourself enough to be open to that prospect. And I so wish we had cloned Howard Baker.
And I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Tennessee, for the longest time, has had a reputation in their politicians, particularly in the Senate, pragmatic problem solvers. And really, that's all you want.
Yeah.
Someone to go up and solve problems.
Absolutely agree with that. Another thing that I've learned, and this helps in business, is always give your third reaction. That's interesting. Strange, but for me personally, my first reaction, if somebody comes at me with something challenging or offensive or whatever, my first reaction is tempting.
Yeah.
And may not be wise. The second is a little more refined version of that. The third's always the best one. It usually either comes after stepping out on the balcony, taking a walk, going to the bathroom, taking a shower, sleeping on it.
Some thought.
Yeah. So that would be one.
That's great advice. And I'm going to leave it on that advice, Stephen. I really can't tell you how much I enjoyed this, and I'd love to do it again. You've got not only an incredible life, but great wisdom, and so glad you're a Chattanoogan.
Thank you. I'm so glad I'm a Chattanoogan too, and I'm glad you are as well.
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Consta Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.